it with grief. How does the human mind process grief and create self-awareness? So how do you think grief can contribute to increased self-awareness and personal growth?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So it is a very big topic, and certainly human beings as a whole, as a creation of Allah, are very complex. So it's not so simple to say that it is one thing or another. But we are experiential learners when it comes to our nature, which means that when we experience something positive in our life that promotes our growth because of its, dare I say, positive effect on us, whether that's due to pleasure, whether that's due to positive reinforcement, whether that's due to the acquisition of some material wealth or something that we've been longing for, we tend to change and we reinforce anything that we consider to be positive. On the other hand, when something happens to us that is negative, we seldom think about it as positive in the sense of our growth. The loss of a loved one, trials and calamities in life in which something is taken away from us, or God forbid something is damaged or pain is caused in some way. Our mind automatically does not ascribe to that a feeling of positivity or that that's beneficial to us. Yet it's in that moment that a person can begin to understand how you grow in life, how you advance in life. Because it's human nature that when things are easy, when things are coming to you very easily, when everything that you've desired and have aspiration for is being fulfilled immediately without struggle, without difficulty, that the human becomes complacent. And Shaitan constantly is sitting there wanting to dull our senses, make our hearts fall asleep. And so when things are easy, when things are comfortable, you tend to become very complacent and you stop paying attention, you become heedless. So then, when sorrow and pain and suffering comes to you, you are unprepared. You ask the question, why is this happening to me? Yet a believer is very different in this moment. Why? Because a believer in the moment of sorrow, in the moment of loss, in the moment of tribulation and grief, constantly reflects on what is the lesson for me today. And that maybe my life was too comfortable such that I stopped growing, I stopped improving. My awareness of myself had changed, had become somewhat desensitized, such that now this grief becomes an opportunity. It becomes a means by which I can reflect on myself. And it is through pain and grief and suffering that insan is able to look at themselves and say, where do I have deficits? Where am I lacking? Particularly when it comes to patience, self-struggle or jihad, understanding our own predilections and our preconceived notions which build up over many, many years. Now in this moment of grief, you almost break. You are stripped down such that you can sit and reflect. And it is a believer who will in that moment sit and reflect and not allow themselves to be overcome by sheer emotion.
So it is so true how sometimes grief teaches us a lot of lessons, as you highlighted, how one can sort of reflect on how one can improve themselves, having that patience. And otherwise, if everything was perfect in our lives, a human would think that we are perfect and we don't need to improve on ourselves and create that sort of self-awareness, as you mentioned. So Shaykh, what role do you think social support plays in the grieving process, and how do you think can it help individuals cope with their loss?
So I think the answer to that question has to be first by each person acknowledging that grief is personal, that the grief that I feel due to my loss, due to what I am experiencing, is going to be very different than what you will experience or someone else will experience. And no matter how much empathy someone else has for me, or even feeling of that they feel that they know what I'm going through because they have experienced the same loss as I have, even then my loss is still very personal. it affects me in a very personal way, in a very unique way, a way that someone else is not experiencing. Does it mean more or less? No, it just means that it's unique. So each person has to begin that grieving process by recognizing this, that my loss is personal, and that to overcome it or to tap into it as a means by which I can improve and grow, I have to look within first. Now, does that mean that I should sit in a corner or seclude myself away from people and say, well, this is my problem, I'll deal with it myself? No, of course not. Because we can rely on the experiences of others. We can rely on the guidance of others. And sometimes, when we need patience, when we need something to help us prop up sort of our confidence, our self-reliance, we need the help of somebody else. And that's why when we experience grief that is severe, that is painful, it is the surrounding individuals who come, they hold us up, they reinforce us, and most importantly, if they are the ones who wish us well, they remind us of the need to turn towards faith, dependence on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it's not just relying on anybody. If you rely on somebody who has no wisdom, who has no understanding of what grief is and how faith plays an important role in dealing with grief, then all they might do is push you down the wrong direction. They may give you guidance that is not beneficial, and unfortunately sometimes can be not positive. It can end up being negative. So when you surround yourself with people of faith, these people of faith will not only reinforce your own iman, they will remove components of despair that may have built inside of you, and they will remind you. And you see that everything in the Holy Quran, everything in the message of Ahlul Bayt is about reminder. We need constant reminder. So these people will remind you that, look, you are suffering, you are in pain, you have experienced loss, but know that if you refrain from complaining, that if you bow your head in front of Allah and say, Ya Allah, I am your weak servant, one who is not capable of bearing anything other than what you have imposed, I am here in front of you. I am laying myself bare in front of you. You help me. Help me to traverse this difficulty with honor, with grace, and most of all, dependence upon you. That sort of support and reminder constantly is what allows us to feel reassured, and it builds confidence inside of us.
It is very important to choose the right circle of friends with grief. How does the human mind process it with grief? How does the human mind process